Alright, so today we're going to be talking about how to simplify a radical. I had trouble with this topic at first, but then once I got the hang of it, I could just quick and easy simplify radicals. So, let's start off with defining what a radical is. Square root of 3 is a radical. Square root of 8 is a radical. Square root of 12 is a radical. Basically, just any number underneath a square root sign is what we call a radical. Okay? So, now that we've got that concept down, let's try another concept. If I were to say that square root of 45 is the same thing as the square root of 5 times the square root of 9, would you agree with me? If you said yes, you're on the right track. Basically, these two are the exact same. They're both correct. The only difference is that this first one has square roots, but these are both the same. They're both equal, right? So using that idea, that's how we simplify radicals. The first step is to find two factors of square root of 45, but also make sure that one of them is a perfect square. Now, what is a perfect square? Square root of 4 is a perfect square, square root of, forgot the next one, square root of 9, square root of 16, square root of 25. All of these radicals equal whole numbers. So this would be 2, 3, 4, and 5. Square root of 5 times square root of 5 equals square root of 25. Basically that type of idea, right? So, I would divide square root of 45 into square root of 5 and square root of 9. It may take you a couple of tries to get to this point, because you can also have divided square root of 45 into square root of 3 and square root of 15, but neither one of these is a perfect squares, so you'd have to do sort of like a trial and error type of thing, right? But I know that square root of 9 is a perfect square, so this can be divided into square root of 3 and square root of 3. Square root of 5 is not a whole number. So it's also not a perfect square, so we have to stop it here. This is where this branch stops. You can't divide it into anything else. And then what you do is if you see two pairs of a square root, you multiply them together. So square root of 3 times square root of 3 would be 3, and it would be outside of the radical. The radical is normally the only radical that is on its own. It's so sad and lonely. Now let's try an example that's a little bit harder, okay? Let's say we have square root of 180. Now, the first step I like to do is I like to divide it by square root of 2. That's just kind of like my go-to thing, because I know that most numbers are divisible by 2, if they're not odd. Square root of 2 times square root of 90, that's what equals square root of 180. So that's where we end our square root of 2. It's not divisible by anything, and it's not a perfect square. Okay? Next, we move on to square root of 90. I know that square root of 90 is divisible by square root of 45 and square root of 2. Now notice we have made a pair, so we put a 2 outside of the square root. There's also going to be another number here, and I know that because 45 can also be broken up. So you just keep moving on and on with this tree until you reach radicals that are no longer able to be simplified. Okay? So, like we said before, square root of 45 can be divisible into square root of 9 and square root of 5. And that's where square root of 5 stops. Square root of 9 can be divided by square root of 3 and square root of 3. And look at that, we've made another pair. So, square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. And then our one single lone radical, square root of 5, has to be inside again while its buddies play outside. And now to finish simplifying this radical, you simply just multiply 2 times 3 to get 6 root 5. And now, if I can find my calculator, I can prove to you that these are the same numbers. Got my good old TI-34. Okay. So the square root of 180 is 13.4164 blah blah blah, all those other ones, okay? I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can. Anyway, and then 6 times the square root of 5 is 13.4164. So we successfully simplified this radical, and they equal each other. Everything is great. Ooh, it's the end screen. Click on one of these links to be directed to that playlist. And don't forget to subscribe!